welcome. And you actually do have to service your own microphone. I know you got it. Andria's all,
We're
all about
practicing
safety.
safe microphone.
We're all practicing safe microphone techniques here. You'll notice that each one of these is covered with their own little hat. So we make sure that there is no contamination or cross-contamination of all of us. Next up to the stage, our new tax collector, J.R. Kroll. Come on up, J.R. Very exciting. I think one of the things that makes Seminole County unique, certainly from a governance standpoint, we've talked about it with the folks from Top Golf, is what makes Seminole County such a great community to be a part of. And a lot of that stems from world-class education. A lot of that stems from a very committed local government. And really, I think what makes the difference for us versus a lot of the other communities you see in Florida is our ability to work together. Many times you see that there's infighting between county commissioners and city councilmen, mayors, and your state delegation. We don't tend to have that in Seminole County. And I think that is evident for all the residents that are here and what we've been able to do, that we work pretty well together. And so let's get to know some of these new folks and have them get enrolled in, I need a podium at this point, in what will be really a continuing of a great legacy that we have here in Seminole County. And so we'll start first with a little bit of background. For most of you know that I was a member of the House for 8 years, from 2010 to 2018. But prior to that, I worked for Procter & Gamble. So if any of you have in your homes Tide or Crest or Scope or Charmin or Pringles or Pantene or Cascade or Dawn or any of the things that you find on most of the aisles at Publix, I worked for that company for many years. But I did it as a cardiac and gastroenterology specialist. So my background professionally is really in healthcare. I'm currently getting my enrolled in getting my second master's degree, this one in public health at Dartmouth. And so I'm continuing to be in the healthcare space and plan on focusing a lot of my legislative effort in that area. And so that is something that I think doesn't get discussed a ton, but is something I'm continuing to pursue as part of my professional background, is really mainly in healthcare, and plan on doing that legislatively. And so each of you have had successful careers in business prior to getting into office. And so Andria, we'll start with you. You came from the insurance industry. And so tell us a little bit about how you got to being here up on stage.
Well, I'll start with the background. I actually still have a career in the insurance industry. I started with Cigna in 1987 and then moved to United Healthcare. I was part of the team that brought United Healthcare to this market. For those of us that are old enough to remember gatekeeper HMOs, and we migrated over to open access. That was, I was part of that team. Moved into the independent agency business years later. I found it easier to raise a child not being part of a Fortune 100 publicly traded company, and became a partner, liquidated the firm, stayed a partner in that firm, and now am a W-2 employee of Highland, which is the firm that acquired the firm, my prior firm. What I do two things in the insurance industry. One is I put together packages for employee benefits for very large employers, and that's part of my role. But the bigger part of my role and the more impactful part of my role, which I get to do primarily based on age, right? If you live long enough, you're an expert at something. So he can talk about Dartmouth and double master's degree. I'm just old and have done a lot of stuff. And I graduated with a 2.1 from Stetson University. So let's go, like, go Hatters. Occasionally bought the books. So my kids aren't in the room. They shouldn't, I hope they're not Zooming. So the second part of my job is that I spend a considerable amount of time investigating and implementing programs to cost contain. So cost containment in the healthcare spend for employers. So think about the things that you spend money on in healthcare that you don't even know about. There are people like me that are behind the scenes trying to figure out how to improve the quality of your care while at the same time reducing cost, which is possible in healthcare.
So Andria is the reason you can't get your drug filled.
Not true. Not true.
Thank you, Andria. And there may be some follow-up questions about that. One of the things JR and I have in common is we're both realtors. I don't practice and he does. And so JR, how did you come about your current role, and tell us a little bit about your business background?
Well, I mean, I currently do have my real estate broker's license still, but I am going now turning over the whole company to my wife, who also has a broker's license. So it's going to be a little hard to sell real estate if you're running the tax collector's office. Being that I got into real estate in 2003, we worked it. I worked it first. My wife was working in banking, and then I, worked it until we finally got her about 10 years ago. She came over to work for me at my brokerage. And since then she got her recently now during COVID, she went and got her broker's license when we decided I was going to be running for tax collector. So we knew if I won the election, she was going to take over, which she's already been doing. That became a lot harder than I expected to actually transfer that. Transfer of power is not as easy as it seems.
Just to be clear, you work for her now.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I always did.
Just want to be clear.
So, we've been doing that, and how I just really used my customer service skills for, 17 years of doing real estate. And before that, I had worked in insurance industry also. I've always been in some kind of a sales position, knowing that customer service is top notch, every job I've done. And I want to bring that same work ethic to the Seminole County Tax Collector's Office, so that you're not going to have any bad experiences when someone comes in, either to get, concealed weapon permits or driver's licenses, registrations and such that they would come to our office for. So I'm really looking forward to working for everyone here in Seminole County, and I'm going to do my hardest, work to try to make everything back to normalcy at that office. And I'm really thankful to everyone to help me get there. Appreciate it.
Well, that's wonderful. And I think it's really important. We've got 5 constitutional officers in the county. Besides the tax collector, you've got the supervisor and the property appraiser and the sheriff and the clerk of the court. Each one of those do direct service day to day. So for those of you who, get on MSNBC or Fox News and wonder what's happening with the country, that's not what these guys do. These are the ones who, when you have an issue that you have to pay something or get your driver's license renewed or something, these are the ones you really interact with that affect your daily life. And it's great to have folks who have a business background, particularly in customer service, because that's really where you mostly interact with government. It's not a lot of the stuff you read in the newspaper and roll your eyes at. It's the day-to-day stuff. And having somebody like JR who's got a great business background in customer service is going to be super helpful for our residents and our citizens. And so we'll get to the second question, which is why you ran for office in the first place. I know I had volunteered as in party stuff and helped folks get elected before, and I was tired of being the angriest guy at the homeowners association meeting, going, "Why aren't we doing something?" Before people finally went, "Well, then why don't you run?" I said, "Well, I will." And the problem with that is that if you run, you might win, and then you have to do the job. I actually really like the policy part. I don't love fundraising. I don't love campaigning, although I had to do a lot of it for this go around. That's not really why I wanted to run. I wanted to run because I really like state policy, not federal and not local. I like state policy. And so that's kind of why I ran, was a lot of the stuff that I would talk about with my friends or read about or, complain about over the kitchen table was something I thought I could go and affect. And so that's why I originally ran. So we'll start with JR. JR, how about you? What was your story? Why did you want to get involved?
Well, it's everyone had seen that article over a year ago. It came out in the Sentinel regarding the previous tax collector. And, I read it and I probably would have just read it and said, geez, someone needs to do something. But at that time, I had just happened to be working with the previous tax collector, Ray Valdez, selling some property for him. So I actually had a customer that I was working with and started just asking him questions about it. And, once I've learned, I said, well, what does it really take to become the tax collector, and what do you have to do, and what's the job, and really what it all entailed? So he could explain to me after 28 years that he had done it, that what the job entailed. And I said, that's something I could definitely do. And I looked at the other candidates that were running, and I thought there's a pretty good chance that the current, at that time, Greenberg would have been able to beat them both. So I said, I need to get in there and be the candidate that can beat him. So I got in, not realizing really how politics works, and learned very quickly that it's just, we needed to have normalcy and honesty and transparency brought back to Seminole County Tax Collector's Office. I mean, it's the handling of all the money for the county is running through there. So we have to have someone that's going to be responsible enough and not be irresponsible with our money. And that was really the biggest reason of why I ran.
Great. Andrea, how about you? You've been a longtime Seminole County influential member, and in fact, a former board chair of this very chamber. So not a stranger to a lot of the local issues. How did you decide that this was the time to run?
So the timing is different from the why. So the why for me was around the notion that I've truly been blessed to live here. I have 2 children that graduated from the school system. Our property values have continued to go up. My work-life balance is wonderful because I get to live in Seminole County. And that's only because of the people that chose to step up and serve before me. So you can't complain about your community if you are not willing to serve it. And you shouldn't just take from it and not attempt to do the same thing for the next generation. So that's my why. I realize how blessed I am to live here and have lived in different parts of the country. I grew up in New Jersey, and we don't want that. Let me just leave it there. And one of the things that I noticed that was happening, so here's the why now. First of all, I'm not of an age that I can say why now for much longer, quite honestly. But secondly, the why now is that we have this very strange phenomena happening where we have an influx of folks from other neighboring counties that are coming here because of our way of life and bringing politics from those counties that they're leaving here. It's the most insane thing I've ever heard as a business person, that if you didn't like what you left, then why would you come here and change this to be that? But that's what was happening. And secondly, what I've noticed is that there are a lot of people that run for office because they need a job. So you all know me well enough to know that the last thing you ever thought I would do is run for office. I'm not politically correct. Alan's squirming around in his chair as we speak. If my husband knew I had a microphone, he'd be freaked out. And I get that. I get that. But the reality of it is, I don't think we need that all the time. I think we need somebody that just strikes up an honest conversation and brings it to the table every day and works hard for you. So that's the goal.
Fantastic. Thank you. There we go. And so we kind of talked about the genesis of the campaign, and so we'll stay on that track and kind of work our way through, which is when I first ran, I originally filed for the Senate seat in January of 2017. So 4 years ago today, I filed to run for the seat that I finally won. So that campaign was kind of never ending. And there were a lot of strategies for it and reasons why I did it that way. But the one thing I found unexpected this time around was certainly having to campaign in the time of COVID. You know, you run more traditionally for the first several years, and then come about March, April, everything shifts. And so one of the things that I found that I had to do during the campaign that was a little different was my amount of social media outreach and accessibility. And so I put my cell phone number on all my communications. The crazy thing was people used it, and they called all the time. And if it was in any way acceptable, I would play some of these voicemails for you. I saved them because they're going to be some kind of montage at some point. But folks would call all the time. And that was a really different, unexpected thing during this campaign cycle. And so we'll go back to Andria. As you were campaigning and getting ramped up, you were somebody that had filed when there were 2 candidates already in the race. And so what kind of unexpected and different did you do, knowing that you were coming into kind of a different kind of race?
You know, I've never done this before. I think people overestimated my political involvement. I've been called the insider, et cetera. I've been peripherally involved, but not much beyond that. I would tell you that I ran it like a business. I built a plan. It was a strategic plan, tactical approaches that went under each strategy, and then I executed the plan. I didn't deviate from the plan based on what an opponent was doing, saying, or behaving like. And I didn't deviate from the plan when different opponents came in. I reevaluated the plan to make sure it still made sense, but stuck to the plan. And And I think that worked well. What I found to be wildly surprising in this election cycle, and it's the only one I have to compare to, is that there's always been this bell curve, right, of lack of civility on both sides of the aisle from a small portion of the people, right? We'll call them the extremists. That bell curve looks different today. That bell curve is flattening out, where I would put like the average bears like us in the mix that fill the middle of that bucket. And we have more people on the extremes. I was stunned to be standing on street corners with my son, who I can still consider young, waving an Andria, Herr sign, and having women older than me driving by with white hair and the mask on, rolling down the passenger side of the window. This took a little bit of effort, driving, leaning their head out the window and shouting obscenities at me. It was stunning, and it was not an unusual event. It happened to both sides of the aisle. Those of us that were running bonded considerably over it because we're all getting yelled at. But where is that okay? And so on one occasion, I did yell back, and it was an older woman. I yelled back, "Does your mother know what you're saying?" And Moira's young girls were standing there waving signs, and the two of them, the three of us sat on the curb and giggled like we were 14 years old. It was pretty funny, but I'm like, what, you don't just get to do this. So we really need to bring it back. Let's bring it back, and I'll just take a step back.
That's good advice. I was trying to help Andria understand that the way I figure out how I'm doing in a race is the unofficial pull of thumbs to middle fingers, which is what you do when you're standing on a corner. JR, similarly, when you got in the race shortly after Andria got in hers, there were 3 already filed, including the incumbent. And then right before qualifying, the incumbent drops out. And so how was it that you changed your strategy, and how did you kind of bring it from that point all the way home through election?
Well, I always figured that my main opponent was the incumbent. I said, I just focused on that and said, if I can't beat him, I don't have to worry about the other 2 nobodies like myself. We said he's the one with the recognition. He's already in with, he's the one. So I always focused on that. And I did not even focus on his, let's say, extracurricular activities. I didn't focus on those. I said, let's just focus alone on business. Because obviously, they don't know, am I going to come in here and do anything crazy like that also, or anything he's doing after work hours? I said, no, this guy is spending too much money. This is out of control. And we need someone that's going to come in here that will take control of this and run this office correctly. So that was my main focus. That was always my focus, even with the other opponents in the primary and the general election. They took chances to just, take jabs at me every chance they had, which, is a little disheartening. But once again, I'm also from Jersey, so I'm kind of used to it.
Bring it.
So really, I just made my focus always to be the positive of my business experience and how I am going to change the office, and not about what my opponents were going to do, or, how anything in the campaign was going. I literally just had to, turn my head the other way and keep focusing forward and forward to keep going. And I think that did help me obviously win the election, because, I didn't focus on negative of somebody else to try to bring them down to make myself come up.
And I think that's one thing that's very consistent among the 3 of us is you plan the work and then you work that plan. I think very frequently there's no real good guidebook for running for office. I mean, if somebody had the plan, that consultant would get hired every time, but every 2 years, tastes and preferences change like they would for anything else. And so every 2 years, you got to have a better, different plan. The issues change, your community changes, the hot topics change, and being able to be consistent enough and disciplined enough to put a plan together and then work that plan, no matter what the headlines are, no matter what it is, focusing on yourself, your background, your business. I think it's super helpful. And so as we think about the offices that we've come into and we've all won, I had, as I mentioned, that experience in the state legislature prior to this. So I thought I knew what to expect. It's basically the same thing, right? You're just on the other side of the Capitol. It's not. It is slightly different office. And one of the things that I found most surprising this week in particular, and some phone calls that I have to return today, because it turns out that people saved all those mail pieces and still use my phone number every day, is to remind folks that I'm not a U.S. senator. I am not in the Capitol today voting on the Electoral College. People have threatened me that if I don't vote for Trump, I'm not the person they thought I was. Florida went for Trump. I'm out. As soon as that happened, I am done. And so one of the things that's very surprising about my role is returning to 10th grade civics for everybody who complains that I'm responsible for the day their garbage gets picked up or what Trump is doing, or I'm not. Like somewhere in between those two is what my role is. And so that's been somewhat surprising, as though it's great to be back in the state legislature, but I'm still having to reset some expectations regarding exactly what my role is. And so who's first on this one? JR, I think. What is some of the most surprising? Now, to be fair, you've been in office for 72 hours now. Congratulations. For those of you who saw social media, he just got sworn in. And so what is some of the most, or what do you think was one of the most surprising things that you found upon being sworn in or upon winning office that you just didn't expect, or Ray didn't tell you about?
Well, I had hoped that I was going to get appointed, which never happened. Just for whatever reason, we never got me appointed. But I did start working on November 4th. I went into the office and been going into the office every day since then. So even though I officially took office on the 5th is when it came in. Now I was already been working in the office. It's just that I wasn't the one signing. I would just be working with my deputy tax collector, and she's been fantastic. She's done so much for this office for the 5 months prior to me getting there, from the resignation of Joel till I got there. And so really it's just been working. I didn't have any expectations. I mean, nothing changed a couple of days ago when I was sworn in. Everything's been the same. There's been no difference. It's just that I can now sign things and move forward as myself being the one doing it. I really just am really honored that, we could get this done through Seminole County to, have me in there to be able to work through it and just be happy to make everything go smoothly again here at Seminole County.
And that's an important point. Shortly after the election, I had talked to JR about maybe having the governor do an out of cycle appointment. He had already had the election. He'd already won. It's not like they're doing anything different. And they had mentioned, they said, well, this has never happened before, that we had a resignation, but then we had an election. So it's not quite an appointment. And it's also not a special election. So where is it? And so it's great that you were able to go in and do that, because this is really falls into one of these uncontemplated circumstances of government that there's no real right answer, because we haven't seen it before. And so it's great for us that you were able to go do that. Andria, how about you? You had longtime friends with the existing county commissioners and seen their role and worked with them over the years many times. What was surprising to you upon coming into office?
So this is the hardest question on the list of questions for me, because there have been a lot of surprises. So I'll pick one very small one that is just observationally something that I have on the list of things that I have been amazed at how accommodating everyone is to my wishes. First, I think that's weird, because I'm here to serve them, and so that's just an interesting phenomenon. But I'll use one example. So we get there and it's, what paint color do you want? And what do you want the furniture to look like? And I'm like, well, does the chair work? I'm good with it. If my feet can touch the ground, that's the measurement of a chair for me. And so ordering the computer, which one would you like and what programs do you want on it? And like, this is just a staff that could not possibly be more accommodating to me and probably everyone else that sat in the seat before me. But I'm a business person. And so my answer was, what's your standard issue? If you're buying me a computer, I think I get your standard issue that accommodates the standard protocols for this organization, not what I want on it, what you need me to have on it so that I can be functional. So I think there's a little paradigm shift there that needs to happen, as with any CEO that would come into an organization, they would look at it from the perspective of, what do I need to be effective? And the people in that organization know better what I need to be effective than I do at this point in my career. And so I'm looking to think about things in a different way. that while the spirit of that is so awesome, the long-term impact of that on the team that serves you is difficult and maybe not efficient. So I'm sure there's going to be 700 phone calls that come in as a result of that statement. So I really hesitated to say it, just so you know, but I already disclosed that I'm not politically correct. And JR, we are glad you're here because we're looking for a bigger check back from you at the end of the year. I just want to get
You're gonna
that
get
out there
one.
too.
This meeting was not publicly noticed. No, it was. It's fine. You guys can talk about that. One of the things I think it's important for folks in Seminole County to recognize with what Andria just said is how our county government is structured slightly differently than other counties in the region. And so we're very fortunate. We have County Commissioner Amy Lockhart is here. Thank you for coming, Amy, as well. Who is one of our, we have 2 of our 5 county commissioners here. Similarly, when you look at things like our school board, and we have school board folks that are here, we are structured differently than other counties in that all of those folks run countywide. Now, if you look at a county like Orange County, they run in their own little district. And what this does in terms of incentive is very different for you as someone who's receiving services. All of our county commissioners and all of our school board members are accountable to every citizen of the county. So it doesn't matter which one you talk to. They are going to be able to and have an incentive to make it better for you versus other counties like maybe Orange, where there's 9 who run in their own little fiefdom and really are concerned about their home district and not necessarily the entire county. Now, I wouldn't ascribe their motives to them in whole, but it really makes you think about why it is that certain counties in Florida who receive a scaled percentage exactly from the state look very different. It's because of the way their local government is structured. And it's one of the reasons why Seminole County, I think, is I'll say superior to a lot of our other neighboring counties in the region in terms of what we're able to do and how we're able to work together, is because the incentive for us is to work with everybody for everybody in the county and not just in their own little thing. So I think it's very helpful for us to, as we're thinking about how we're going to deliver services, whether it's education, whether it's garbage pickup or water, that it's important that you can talk to any of our members because they're all incentivized to make sure that works for you. Now, when you get into office, you have grand plans. I remember that I got in and first in the House, and I thought, I'm going to make sure that based on the legacy of George Washington and Ronald Reagan, I'm going to do great things. And day one, they're like, here's a 3-inch notebook of people who don't like how their water tastes. And I was like, well, this is not as sexy as I thought it was going to be. Certainly we have grand plans as we get into office. And so this will be a chance to talk a little bit about what are your grand plans. Now, we've talked a little bit about the surprising stuff and the mechanics of day one. My mechanics of day one were I had to find an office and hire staff. I had done this before. I knew what I was supposed to do, but getting to that grand vision is sometimes takes a week or so to kind of get your feet moving. For me, I'm fortunate enough, I'm the new chair of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I've got some things that I want to do with northern storage over Lake Okeechobee. I want to make a more robust septic to sewer program, working with the local counties, since I also have responsibility for Volusia, to make sure that that's a more robust program. We know that for impaired waterways and certainly things like the Wekiva, the Econ, as we have nutrients leaching in from septic systems, that's an issue. But we also have to balance the needs of homeowners who can't be burdened or shouldn't be burdened with owing a ton of money to convert to the sewer, or having a burden of making sure they can't sell their place because of some kind of lien that's put on it. So we need to make sure that's a robust plan that allows us to have homeowners not be overburdened while still protecting the environment. Noble goal. We hope we get there. And so, Andria, we'll go back to you to start. What are 1 or 2 of your grand plans for being in office at the county?
So I'm going to take the table stakes out of the discussion, right? So create good paying jobs, environment, all the stuff that you run a campaign on, that because those are the speaking points that people resonate with. In addition to that, and those are important, but that's blocking and tackling, right? We need to be more competitive than the counties that surround us in those areas every single day. We can do that. there are two things. One, and the order of these may change over the 4 years, hopefully. But one is that the team of people that serve you at Seminole County government, the employees there, they have been in an EOC, right, Emergency Operations Center, for close to a year. A year. Think about what COVID has done to you and your businesses and multiply that times 10 at a minimum. The stress that we see on that operation for what they do every day. And that's not just to say that people that work in that area are in the EOC. People from every segment of our operation have been pulled out and put on full-time COVID activities. You still need your trash picked up. So this is double duty. And we cannot shortchange the impact of that on a team of experienced people, or we will start losing the best talent in the organization to you all. That would be dumb and expensive. So that has become tactic number one of we need to be paying attention to our team so that they can serve you best. And then the BHAG, for those of you that have read Good to Great, the big, hairy, audacious goal is, if ever there's a time to start talking about improving the health of our population, of our community, it's now. I've been talking about it for 30 years in the insurance industry because I'm in the health insurance industry, and we do really dumb stuff to ourselves, myself included. I love the drive-through at McDonald's. Love it. But we now have an opportunity, because people are paying attention, because COVID has a more negative impact on you the worse you have treated yourself over the years. And so now's the time to address that community-wide.
JR, how about you? What's your big goal for your time in office?
Yeah, well, I'm like you, that when you came in, you had to, get an office and build everything from the ground up. I'm actually more or less tearing down a lot because there was so much there that we have to get rid of. Like we have the admin offices in Lake Mary. There are 3 offices up there that house administration, concealed weapons, accounting, and IT. So I've already negotiated the leases to get rid of 2 of those leases, and we're going to go be at our admin. We're going to be going back to Sanford, the community service building there. So we're already setting up for that by probably next week. And then we got to wait to get our concealed weapon permits moved back to Lake Mary, and we're moving accounting in with IT. So we're just going to have one facility up there. Biggest reason I didn't move that one is just because the cost of getting rid of all 3 leases at the same time, and the worried about where, the cost of moving IT. In the midst of that, we are also updating all the tax software for the entire systems that we use, from a 1988 computer program that works with DOS to transferring that over to the new program, and that's been pretty tedious. So that's our big elephant in the room, to get that done now by next tax roll. So I didn't want to move IT this year. I said, no way, we got to keep that there just to keep normalcy. But really, I just want to make sure that we cut back on all the excess spending that was done. All of the contracts have been peeled back, and we're non-renewing, and that's what I've been working on since November. So it's really been great.
That's not easy stuff, guys. So blessings to you.
Yeah, a lot of it were already. They were coming to expiration, and it's just non-renewals. And I'm always, being in real estate for 17 years, we know that you get bombarded with people every day telling you, this is how you're going to make $1 million in real estate. Do this one thing, pay for this one program. And of course, they want you to sign up for a monthly, yearly contract on this. And I'm never in real estate, never wanted to do that, because I said, if your product works, I'm going to buy it. Every month you'll have me as a customer. I'm never going to leave it. But, I'm not going to do the same thing here with the tax collector's office, is to get into any lengthy contracts. I want to say, you're going to prove yourself every month to work for it. And of course, if it's something we like, we're going to use it every month. And if it's not, we can say at any time, no, it's a month to month and we need to part ways. So that's just kind of how I want to make sure we don't have any kind of crazy, excess spending of contracts that have been done in the past, and just keep it streamlined so we can keep more money to come back to our county commissioners. So that comes back to Seminole County. that they can use for our services here.
Perfect. So as we start to bring this program in for a landing, we're all very fortunate in that we have just won 4-year seats, all 3 of us, except me, because it's normally a 4-year seat. But next year, later this year, we go through the once every 10-year process of redistricting. And so I'll actually be on the ballot again in 2 years, which is super. In that, seeking advice from you all as to, as folks are looking at maybe their own future, they've heard your story, they've been inspired, they thought if these yokels can do it, I can do it. And so maybe potential candidates in this room, what advice would you give to those folks who may be looking to run for office or thinking about giving back in a service capacity like you all have done? JR, we'll let you go first in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Andrea said. I mean, I don't think you'd want to just do it for the money, like someone to say, "Oh, I want this as a job." And I said, I didn't need the job. I said, I have a successful real estate business, and I could have just said, if I spent the money I spent on campaigning and put it into advertising, I easily could have doubled my sales that last year. Instead, I took a big hit with COVID and it's money spent on the campaign, and just said, because it was, for me, it was doing what's right to make Seminole County better. I mean, I've lived here since 1983, and I love Seminole County. I've grew up here, middle school, high school, I've just been around here forever, and I really never left. I always want to have what's best for our county. So really, for any candidates, if you were going to run, I would say, keep it a clean race. There's no reason to try to tear somebody else down to try to make yourself look better. It never works that way. People are always going to look at it and say, well, you tore that other person down, but you didn't really bring yourself up either. So that's always been mine. I mean, that was my motto going through this whole thing, that I wasn't going to attack anybody or do anything on their character or false accusations on anything. I just said, no, just focus on what I can do. And that, like I said, that's what seemed to work.
Andrea, how about you?
I think you have to do it for the right reasons. And my general advice is just say no to drugs.
Solid.
Alan's
Very
given us
solid.
the time signal, so I just
Very
thought I'd
solid.
brief.
Any Q&A, or are we wrapping up? No Q&A, but we will be happy to stick around after that. In closing, I want to thank all those who have dedicated their time to public service. School board member Karen Allman is here. Thank you for being here. Fellow County Commissioner Amy Lockhart, Mayor David Mueller was here. And so thank you to JR Kroll. Thank you to Andrea Herr for your service. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Rebecca to close us up. We'll just stay seated here until you get done.
Things you never thought you'd have to do. All right, thank you guys so much. Please join me in thanking them for being here today. If you are not a chamber member yet, either virtually or in person, please speak with Christina or Pam before you leave the building today, or if you're on Zoom before the end of the day, and she will credit your ticket price on your membership. You've got flyers on your tables with lots of fun things coming up to start the year, and I have a door prize winner. It is a $30 gift card to Nothing Bundt Cakes, and it is from Pegasus Insurance, and Phyllis has won. Yep. Please don't forget to register for events and register early. We still have capacity restrictions. Thank you to Topgolf, Next Horizon, J. Wayne Miller Company, Sanford Orlando Kennel Club, and the Orlando Law Group for sponsoring. Thank you to Lewis from 1AV for the Zoom capabilities today. Thank you to Jerry for the photography. Thank you to Lake Mary Event Center for hosting us, and have a great day.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Don't forget